Hello, my name is Beth Turnovan from Family Services Windsor, Essex, and welcome back to our virtual wellness program. Today we're going to move into Module 3. We're going to begin to talk about feelings, anxiety, and stress. When we talk about feelings, we're talking about our emotions, and that can include our responses or our reactions to things that are happening around us, in our relationships, in the world around us, through events and experiences that we have. And we use the feeling words or the emotional words to describe how those events or experiences in our lives make us feel. Because the events that we are involved in or the experiences in our lives are constantly changing, it's natural that our feelings or our emotions are going to change too. Think of the word emotion, within which is the word motion. So our feelings are often in motion. Our feelings are an emotional way that we learn to respond to our own thoughts and what goes on in the world around us. They represent that inner voice, if you will, or that inner guide that provide us with information that helps us understand ourselves better. They tell us what we like, maybe what we dislike, what our preferences are, what our wants are, but also what is safe and what is not for us. And our feelings also tell us something about our reactions or responses to other people. There is a whole range of feelings that we can manifest, and they can be experienced in different degrees of intensity. Some of our feelings are strong, some of them are moderate, some of them are mild, and anywhere in between. Sometimes, as we grow up within our families and also in society, we learn that there are good feelings and feelings that don't feel so good. We sometimes refer to those as bad feelings. But both the good and the bad feelings, or the uncomfortable feelings, they are always there to teach us something about ourselves. We learn that some feelings can be expressed just a little bit and other feelings can be expressed a lot. We have, as I say, comfortable and uncomfortable feelings, and the whole range in between. So let's talk about some healthy perspectives about our feelings. Feelings are neither good nor bad if we were to assess them. They're neither right or wrong. Feelings just are. They exist, and it is not helpful to judge them. The difference being that we learn. We listen to our feelings and we learn from our feelings. There is a difference between having a feeling and doing something or acting on the feeling. It's also important to know that feelings don't last forever. No matter what you're feeling, eventually that feeling will change or lift, and another feeling will take its place. When a strong feeling comes by, you do not necessarily have to act on that feeling. All we need to do is to recognize it, to hopefully understand it, and gain in some awareness about yourself in that you are feeling that emotion in a strong fashion. Also to understand that feelings are not facts. When feelings are very powerful, sometimes they feel just like the truth. You cannot get rid of feelings until the moment that you are wishing to change them. Our feelings serve an important function for us. They serve an important survival function. Sometimes, if we are willing to radically accept our feelings as they arise, we then are in a better position to gain an awareness and learn from them. Our feelings are always teaching us something. Let's talk a little bit about our brain and our emotions. So our brain is in charge of everything that we do, from our breathing to our eye blinking, to our behaviors, to our physical actions, and how we feel at any point in time. Most things, like movies or uncomfortable dreams, they aren't exciting or scary unless your brain decides that they are. So it is the interpretation of the events or experiences that we move through in our lives. Our brain gets input from everything that we see, that we hear, that we feel, that we taste, and that we smell. And it responds quickly to tell our bodies how to respond or how to react. In fact, just about every feeling is connected to some sort of reaction in our body. We blush when we are embarrassed, for example. We cry when we are sad or moved, for example. And we jump when we are startled. Let's talk about some common physical reactions to our feelings or our emotions. So again, knowing what we have just learned about the brain, when our body gets a message that our brain is sending to it, it bursts or moves into action. For example, if we think about tightening up certain muscle groups in our body, when we feel tense, our muscles can get tense. Our muscles can tighten up. When we are tense, we may find that we are clenching our teeth. We may tighten up or hunch up our shoulders. We may squint our eyes. We may hold our hands in tight fists, for example. Another common physical reaction to our feelings is the standard feeling butterflies in the pit of our stomach. When we are stressed, our body produces certain chemicals that can make us feel shaky or even weak. It may feel like someone is using your stomach as a trampoline. And some people refer to this as having the jitters. They feel nauseous, they feel nervous in their stomach, they have butterflies in their stomach. And of course, perspiration. When our feelings run strong, our forehead, under your arms, your hands, even the insides of your elbows can begin to perspire. Some people experience a trembling or a shaking in their knees. When we get nervous, our kneecaps can start to move or bounce up and down, especially if you're standing up. When you sit, your whole leg might be in motion. And I've already referred to the blush response. We may get red in the face when our feelings are running high, especially for those who are fair-skinned. Anyone's face can feel hot in reaction to strong feelings, even if it doesn't turn a few shades of red. We can still feel the heat in our face. And then also, a common reaction to our feelings can be an elevated heartbeat. Has your heart ever beaten so hard and fast that it feels as though it may beat out of your chest or that others around you can actually hear your heart beating? Strong feelings can make you feel as though your heart were climbing right up into your throat. Breathing too quickly can actually lessen the amount of oxygenated blood getting to your brain. And not breathing often enough can pump too little oxygen into the brain and the large skeletal muscles and organs of your body. Either one can leave you feeling dizzy or faint. So let's learn a little bit more about our feelings. You see the list of feelings on the screen, and I'm wondering, in using the list of feelings to write in after the sentence at the bottom, I feel, and using the list of feelings to plug into the space there to complete the rest of the sentence. And then use your own words to describe when you feel that way. So in other words, if you were to look through, I feel happy when, and write that down at home, when you feel happy. Move on to the next one. I feel lonely when, and keep moving through the list. Go through all 16 of the feeling words here. Some of them you may realize I experience these feelings more frequently than other feelings, and that's okay. Part of our module today is about increasing the level of understanding and awareness about ourselves. So take your time with this exercise. It's really, really important. Let's move on to the next part of Module 3. Let's get a beginning understanding of what anxiety is. We're going to learn about what maintains anxiety and how we can help ourselves to reduce a feeling or state of anxiety. So again, we move through a helpful definition. So right off the bat, let's understand that while anxiety often gets a bad rap, if you will, it is in fact a natural emotion experienced by each and every one of us. It runs on a continuum, mild anxiety, moderate to severe. In understanding everything that we can about anxiety, that puts us in a position to ideally keep us out of the severe range and help us to move more so to the moderate and mild range of anxiety. The main function of anxiety is to protect us and to prepare us to deal with a real threat or a danger. Notice the word is in italics on the slide. It's to prepare us and protect us from a real threat or danger. Healthy anxiety can energize us as people and enable us to take action to overcome a threat or a danger. But those who struggle with unhealthy anxiety find that they are in that constant state of preparation, as if a danger or a threat is imminent or present. So it is like being in a constant state of alarm. And that is really, really difficult to live with. This occurs when anxious feelings are a result of a perceived threat or danger, when a real threat or danger does not exist. There are a number of symptoms or signs of anxiety. As we take a look at this list, I want you to just, again, have your pen and paper ready and just write down the words, put a check mark beside the ones that you have experienced as it relates to your individual manifestation of anxiety. Important to know that because each and every one of us is different, our backgrounds are different, and we all have different levels of personal resilience, then the way each and every one of us is going to feel anxiety is also different. Some of the symptoms and signs of anxiety include the rapid heartbeat, as I have referred to, that sense of dread that something bad is going to happen imminently, shortness of breath, numbness or tingling in hands and feet. It can include a dry mouth, tense muscles, as I've mentioned. Hot and or cold flashes can occur for some people. Chest pain or discomfort in the chest area can occur. Again, the shaking or the trembling, the sweating, fears of losing control of ourselves, fears of losing control of our emotions or our behavior. As we've mentioned, it can lead to a feeling of butterflies in the stomach, abdominal distress, nausea. Some people experience an actual choking feeling or difficulty swallowing. Some people experience thoughts of fears of dying, and as we've mentioned, lightheadedness or dizziness. So what maintains a state of anxiety in us as people? There are a number of reasons. One of them is that we avoid that which we think is a threatening or anxiety-provoking situation. Avoiding situations that trigger feelings of anxiety may bring immediate relief from those feelings. But the problem is that in the long run, avoidance may also act as a reinforcement of our perceived fears of these situations, and our belief, therefore, that we are not able to cope with the anxiety. If we avoid a task or a situation as a result of our feelings of anxiety, these feelings can actually tend to be stronger when the situation happens again. So you begin to already pick up on the fact that the manifestation of anxiety can be cyclical. In addition, if we avoid a situation that we think is catastrophic or going to cause us anxiety, we never learn to work through those feelings, events, or situations. Another item that actually seeks to maintain anxiety is our self-talk, what we say to ourselves. So self-talk is what we tell ourselves in our own minds, in our own thinking. Anxiety is created when we, as I have mentioned, anticipate or are anticipating sort of a worst case scenario and begin to use, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, the what if type of thinking. So, for example, what if I have a panic attack? What if I lose control of myself while I'm in a public place or if I'm in a social gathering? Learning to recognize and challenge our anxious self-talk can assist us in managing our anxiety. This item on the slide right here is extremely important. Another aspect that can lend itself to creating and maintaining anxiety is our sense of self, our sense of assertiveness. So when we are not able to express our needs and feelings to others, we may have difficulty, therefore, setting limits with other people or asking for help. We can also, therefore, have trouble solving problems or conflicts in our lives and struggle, as I say, to get our needs met. This can start to create a sense of anxiety or unsettledness within ourselves. Any of these factors can contribute to our ongoing experiences of anxiety. So relatedly is the next one in terms of our self-esteem, our sense of self. When we lose sight of our value and our uniqueness, our differences as people, we tend to put the needs and the wants of other people first ahead of our own. It is about looking after our own sense of self as we are also helping others. So having that very important fine balance. Our own self-care and the need for nurturance, self-nurturance, can become a low priority in the face of other demands and other pressures in our lives. Building on our sense of self can help us to learn to value and nurture ourselves as well as others. And therefore, we can learn to set boundaries with others in our lives. And the next one, the importance of having in our repertoire a set of relaxation skills. Remember I mentioned about all roads lead back to the brain and our brain function? Having a set of relaxation skills helps us to stay in what is known as the window of tolerance and out of a state of hyperarousal or anxiety. The body and the mind are connected when it comes to anxiety. Very important point. Lots of things can happen in our bodies. So we begin to see the notion that the physical sensations that happen in our bodies as a result of anxiety, they actually become our cues, our very important cues to recognize, I must be having an anxiety-based thought because I can feel the nervousness in my stomach. That's a cue that can help us to learn to manage our anxiety better. When we begin to experience muscle tension in our body, it can also tend to activate a restriction in our breathing and therefore increase that physiological anxiety response, which can then elevate our emotional anxiety response, the two being very, very much connected. So practicing, learning, knowing 3 to 5 different types of relaxation techniques can assist us in counteracting the physiological anxiety response that is happening in our brain and in our body. And as I say, bring ourselves back down into the window of tolerance. In so doing, we are able to improve our overall well-being. Another aspect, very important, that will seek to maintain high anxiety levels is our lifestyle. So it is not surprising that pressures related to your lifestyle can increase your anxiety levels. We understand that. Your reaction to daily stresses contributes to your anxiety level, how quickly we respond, and how we are responding to those stresses or pressures. Stress and anxiety are not one and the same, but can negatively influence and impact one another. We're going to understand a little bit more coming up about the differences between stress and anxiety, but we've already learned that anxiety is a future-oriented emotion and physiological state of manifestation that is often based on future-oriented catastrophic thinking. Another aspect that is related to the development of excessive states of anxiety that also relates to every one of the categories I have mentioned thus far is our self-care. So things like caffeine, nicotine, excessive alcohol use, drug use, inadequate sleep, so poor sleep architecture, poor diet, and lack of regular exercise can also contribute to states of anxiety. Making a conscious effort to make healthy lifestyle choices and changes in any of those areas that I just mentioned can improve our general health and help to minimize the experiences of anxiety. So let's move on now and understand a little bit about the differences between anxiety and fear. So as you see right at the top of the slide, and as I've mentioned, fear is known as the present-oriented emotion. So again, fear is an intensely felt response that we all must have in order to survive. It helps us, as I mentioned earlier on, take protective action when our safety or health are threatened. When we experience this emotion of fear, our body, again, will do a number of things to help us get moving in order to take care of ourselves, meaning to help us move out of danger. Again, our body and our brain are also kicking into overdrive, and a number of bodily sensations can be activated, a number of which we have already mentioned. All of this activity that happens in our body can leave you with a feeling of heightened energy, or as we know it as an adrenaline rush. These bodily changes are necessary. They're telling us something in order to help us to take action. Fear also tends to heighten awareness of your surroundings so that you can quickly detect sources of danger and again, move yourself to a place of safety. So as we have now learned, anxiety is the future-oriented emotion. People know anxiety as a feeling of uneasiness or a sense of anticipation, worry, or muscle tension. As I've mentioned, everybody experiences anxiety differently in their bodies. We need the ability to experience anxiety because it can motivate us to get things done. But it's important to know, as I mentioned, where we are on that mild to severe continuum. And ideally, stay away from the severe end of the continuum. The bodily changes associated with anxiety are actually less pronounced and dramatic than those associated with fear. And here I'm talking about healthy anxiety. At the same time, anxiety and worry can last so much longer than fear, often ebbing and flowing for days, weeks, or even years. And so now you begin to see how that is leading to the severe end of the continuum of anxiety. This is possible in part because anxiety tends to be fueled more by what our mind says about future-oriented catastrophic thinking than any real source of danger or threat. Again, anxiety being the future-oriented emotion. So, in looking at this particular activity, it is an opportunity to see if we can know the difference between anxiety and fear. So, if you look at the 10 options that are on the slide, And again, take your pen and paper and list, when you read out each statement, if you think the event that is listed there would most likely cause anxiety, or if you think the event would most likely cause fear. So for example, if you saw a bear in the woods, would that cause you anxiety, or would it cause you fear? If there was a possibility of seeing a bear in the woods, would that cause you anxiety or fear? And so on. If you go through the remaining statements on each side of the slide, circle A for anxiety or F for fear. So take your time before moving on to the next slide. Let's begin to understand the various different ways that we can learn to manage anxiety better. So again, when we are learning to manage anxiety, it is not a skill that happens overnight, but it can happen as we pay attention to what we know about ourselves, what we understand about the difference between fear and anxiety, and to also know that we cannot completely eliminate anxiety from our lives. Remember, we all have anxiety as a helpful manifestation to protect ourselves and to remove ourselves from danger, but also to motivate ourselves. In the journey of dealing with anxiety, many people begin to believe that anxiety should completely go away. Therefore, anytime they may feel anxiety, they may believe that this is really, really bad and they must make it go away. But let's remember, anxiety is also a useful emotion, provided it does not move into the severe range. So we have to remember, some people will use avoidance, some will turn to maladaptive behaviors such as excess alcohol use or drug use, or some will be left with racing thoughts. When anxiety reaches this point, it can be dysfunctional and may become a way of life. So we've got to be very, very careful of that and choosing maladaptive responses in order to cope with anxiety. Eventually, people may become conditioned to believe that they are in constant danger or under constant threat, when that is not the actual situation. It's as if those people, as I mentioned before, are constantly on high alert and being prepared for something bad to happen. Therefore, if they constantly expect things to be bad, they won't be so disappointed when something goes wrong. So you can begin to see that that type of thinking actually becomes very unhelpful for an individual. Here are some helpful statements to help us gain freedom from anxiety. So as I've referred to, there is actually no way to escape the simple fact that anxiety will be a part of our life. Many people do live well with significant anxiety. Those people have learned to put their anxiety-based thoughts or their unpleasant thoughts into their proper place. But it does not stop them in their tracks. They realize that it is a part of their life, but indeed it is not their whole entire life. It is very possible to learn how to free yourself from the pull of the constant struggle with anxiety. It is possible to not let anxiety control you in your life, to not let panic and painful memories from the past control you in your life. And in learning to control a severe manifestation in your life, you can still be deeply involved in the things that you care about and have your best fulfilled life. So in learning a set of skills, many of which we have talked about today, as I have mentioned, can enable you to remain involved in the things that you deeply care about in your life, whereby you have control over anxiety. It does not have control over you. Let's understand a little bit more about how anxiety affects us. I'm just going to talk about 4 main ways that anxiety affects us. we've already spent a good amount of time talking about the physical reactions. So hopefully now your awareness about the manifestation of anxiety has already increased. Okay, the pounding heart, your churning stomach, rapid and shallow breathing, and the manifestation of long-term anxiety and how that affects us physiologically. Our thoughts. When we are anxious, we can tend to worry about things in the future and have negative thoughts like, what if I embarrass myself when I go to that family gathering or that social engagement? What if I feel as though I can't breathe, like I'm suffocating, that I may faint, that I may have a heart attack? These are common thoughts and questions that many people have shared, as well as thoughts like, we may experience images or pictures in our minds, and those images may include what we're thinking about how people may engage with us, that we may land up in a car crash, or that someone may be criticizing us. So again, not actual fact-based indicators, but future-oriented thoughts. Our mood and our feelings. Anxiety itself is a type of mood. Anxiety and prolonged stress can also affect our mood in other ways. For example, if we experience anxiety that actually restricts our lives over a long period of time, we may feel guilty, we may feel down, we may feel unmotivated, we may feel a sense of helplessness, and we may feel elements of depression. Anxiety, as I have referred to, also affects our behavior by changing the things that we feel that we are able to do. And again, this can result in avoidance of many things, such as going into a grocery store, or going to the dentist, or following up on a doctor's appointment, or going out for coffee with friends. When we can't avoid things, we may do things to make us feel safe, such as always having someone with us, or carrying things with us that we don't really need. These are known as safety behaviors. If you just take a little bit of time to examine the diagram on your screen, this is actually referred to as a 5-factor model. You see at the bottom there, it is indicating that there's something in the environment that is feeling as though it is a stressor. So that in the environment can be an experience or an event. You see that there are the 4 areas that I've listed: thoughts, mood, behavior, and physical reactions. We've now learned how important those physical reactions or physical sensations are, as they act as cues to what we might be thinking. That is an anxiety-based thought. And this diagram shows how every aspect of a person's life influences all the others. You see that all the arrows are going in all directions. So for example, changes in our thoughts influences our physical reactions, which then influences our mood and behavior, all areas connected. It also shows that, again, experiences or events, stressful situations in our lives can cause anxiety and problems in these 4 other areas. So if we think about anxiety-based thoughts as being our worries about something that may happen in the future, some of the tools that we have in order to begin to let go of our worries or not focus so much on our future-oriented worries, we can let go of something if we don't know that we have it in the first place. So it is about our awareness of ourselves and what we are thinking. So one of the first steps is just to notice and acknowledge that you are in fact worrying about something. You may take the moment to begin to write these worry-based thoughts down. And we're noticing them and acknowledging them without judgment. This is a learning process that we are involved in. So you might be able to do this by saying to yourself something like, I can feel in my body that worry coming. I've never paid so much attention to it before as I am now with what I'm learning in this module and the other 2 modules. Here comes that worry thought again. And how do I know that? Because I can feel that physiological sensation in my body. And I've learned now that that is a cue. So I notice now that I am worrying. I'm going to write down what that worry-based statement is. The next one. There's a difference between reacting and actually responding. Responding with a new sense of awareness. I mentioned earlier on about the cyclical process of anxiety-based thoughts. It is common for many people who are experiencing anxiety to engage with their worries, either consciously or unconsciously. People end up chasing them around in their thoughts, in their mind. And as a result, they may try to control those thoughts through some unhealthy ways. Instead, as we've learned in the first step, it is important to learn the skill of just observing, just noticing the worry-based thought. Again, without judgment, but also importantly, not reacting to the worry-based thought. Describe to yourself the thought that you're having. Write it down in full. Write down the feelings that it is causing you. Write down the physical sensations that you're having in your body. Just allow the worries to be without reacting, without responding to them, and without trying to change them in any way. This may take some time to develop some efficiency with this particular skill. When we have examined our worry-based thoughts, it then puts us in a position to begin to let them go, even if it is just one at a time. But this comes only after first acknowledging, observing, and describing the worries that you have, again, without judgment, before you can make the decision to let the worry-based thought go. So we use a little bit of imagery here, and everybody is different. But if you have taken the time to write down what that worry-based thought is on a sheet of paper and put a square around it or circle it, then you can envision how you would like to let that thought go. Some people put it on a leaf and they see it trailing off in the stream or in the lake, and practicing this one over and over and over again. You might find yourself saying to yourself, my worries are not facts. They are not the reality or the truth. They are just thoughts that I have had. They aren't helpful to me. I'm now going to make the decision to let that singular worry-based thought go. Figure out your own way of using imagery to let that thought go. And the importance of being present-focused, which means staying out of the past and staying out of the future. The future isn't here yet, but what is here is right now, in the here and now. So once you have moved to the step of telling yourself to let a worry go or pass, it is important then for you to focus your attention on the present moment. Again, when we worry, we are focused on the future and about things that could happen, but we don't know that for sure. We don't have the evidence for that because the future isn't here right now. Instead, if you focus on the simple things happening in your present moment, it is therefore impossible to let those worry-based thoughts affect you. Being present in the moment may seem like a strange or different concept at first, but with practice and skill development, it does become easier over time. It then becomes about increasing your awareness of your physiological cues, your breathing, whether or not you are tensing your muscles, whether or not you have a shallow or rapid heartbeat, listening to your body, and the surroundings in the moment when things are happening. something we rarely stop to focus on. So always including what is happening with our physiological sensations in the moment, in the present moment. As you see in the thought bubble, this requires a lot of practice, but by focusing on the present moment, you will eventually develop the skill of letting your worry-based thoughts pass by. So as we look upon this slide, we begin to also see that there are a number of other skills that we can apply with ourselves when we are feeling anxious. Some of these you will use singularly, and others you will use collectively. It can depend on the event or experience what skill you're going to use. So right off the get-go, you see there the importance of our breathing. That helps us to regulate ourselves. It helps us to regulate our brain function. It helps us to stave off the production of cortisol into our brain, which is going to elevate the physiological and emotional sense of anxiety. Pair your breathing with counting. 5 breaths in, hold it for 2 breaths at the top, and exhale to a total of 7 breaths. Everybody's different. Some of us have to use 4 breaths in, hold for 1 breath, and exhale to a total of 6 breaths. Find out what works for you. The point being that we are going to slow down our respiration. The practicing of positive self-talk. Chances are you have been experiencing negative self-talk. Write out a list of positive statements. Put them up on your refrigerator door. If you're having difficulty developing positive statements, reach out to a trusted confidant so that you can come up with some more balanced statements to practice every single day. So you're able to challenge your negative-based thoughts with positive thoughts. So from a physiological standpoint, when you sit down, put your 2 feet on the ground. If you are sitting in a chair, hold on to the arms of the chair or feel the seat of the chair against your back. Ground yourself in those physiological touch points. Look around. Remind yourself where you are right now, in the present moment, and try to focus on what is going on around you right now. Clap your hands together 10 times and notice the sensation in your hands, and also notice the sound that the clapping is making. Find a distracting activity, like listening to music, picking up your guitar, hitting the ground doing some gardening. Put in your favorite movie, watch it again. Return to a favorite book of yours. Another way to manage the physiological manifestations of anxiety is through progressive muscle relaxation. Starting with the tip of your toes, tense and relax that muscle group and make your way from head to toe or from toe on up. Tensing and relaxing each separate muscle group. Call a friend for support, a trusted confidant, when you are feeling overly anxious. If you are sitting too much during the day, get up and move around. Just that step of getting up out of the chair and moving around is a distraction. Leave the situation that you are in if your anxiety is telling you that you are in fact in present danger. So if you feel that you are in present danger, move yourself to a safe space. As I've mentioned, engage in a physical activity like walking, like running, like swimming, like bike riding, any type of physical activity that you can do, either in your own home or outside. Sometimes a very important point of anxiety reduction is to take in either a sweet or a sour candy. This will immediately make your mouth water and assist you with reducing anxiety in the moment. You are also doing it as a distraction technique and therefore will induce the relaxation response. Take a relaxing bath or shower. Engage in a mental activity that you enjoy, like completing a crossword puzzle, a regular puzzle, a mandala, painting, whatever you find for your own creative expression. And finally, let's now begin to talk about stress. We know that our modern lives is full of hassles, it's full of deadlines, it's full of frustrations and demands. For many people, stress is so common that in fact it has become a way of life. People will often talk about the stressors in their life. But again, stress isn't always bad, although we want it to come in small doses. Stress can help us to perform under pressure. It can motivate us to do our best or to get things done. There are two types of stress, eustress and distress. But when we are constantly running in that emergency mode, that alarm mode that I mentioned before, our minds and our bodies can begin to pay the price. So stress is a normal physical reaction to events that we may feel where we feel ourselves to be threatened or upset our balance in some way. When we sense danger, whether it is real or imagined, the body's defenses begin to kick into high gear, into a rapid automatic response. And that response is known as the fight, flight, freeze reaction, or the stress response. Again, everything happening in our brain and then causing that cascade of physiological reactions in our bodies. There are a number of sources of stress. We have sort of our customary or anticipated or expected stress. Most people experience this type of stress as part of daily living. It can include events that often represent transitions in our lives. The examples are listed here. The aging process, maybe coming together in a marriage or in a committed relationship, moving, changing locations, going through holidays with or without people, changing jobs, going to get our groceries, standing in line at the bank, paying our bills. And then we have the unexpected events in our lives, some of which can be described as shocks or tragedies. For example, where somebody lands up in an accident, somebody is a victim of crime, somebody experiences the loss of a relationship or a death, or somebody experiences a sudden loss of some aspect of their health. We also have sources of stress that are known as progressive or accumulating over time. This type of stress tends to build over time, but it is also considered as part of the strains of daily life. But once again, knowing what we already know, listening to your thoughts and your bodily sensations can be a cue that I am developing accumulated stress, and I may need to take some steps to mitigate that. Examples can include, as are listed here, unresolved issues in relationships. Sometimes it is parent-child conflict. Sometimes it is having to work overtime or constantly being caught in traffic on the way home or during a commute. As mentioned, it can be the loss of a state of our health over time that is happening over a great deal of time. And sometimes it can be unresolved family of origin issues that are still impacting us to this day. Then we also have something known as personal trait stress. This has to do more so with the type of people that we are, a personality trait, if you will, that can predispose us to anxiety or how we respond to situations. We begin to see that personal trait stress is related to some of the elements that I mentioned at the beginning of the module. Things like a lower self-esteem, a tendency towards worrying, a sense of perfectionism, either being passive in our relationships or non-assertive, and again can also include a tendency towards negative self-talk. There's also a difference between acute and chronic stress. We're beginning to tie all the pieces of the module today in together. So we've learned that stress can be short-term, known as acute stress, or longer term, as I've just indicated, known as accumulated or chronic stress. Again, acute stress being that reaction to an immediate threat, commonly known as that fight, flight, freeze response. The threat can be any situation that again is perceived. It may not be actual, but it can be perceived, either subconsciously or falsely, as a danger. As we've already learned, common acute stressors include a noise that can trigger a stress response. So this would be an unexpected, startling noise that can bring about that startle response or the stress response, especially if this startle response is happening during sleep. People feeling that they are in a crowded situation, which is making them feel uncomfortable. People that are feeling alone and isolated. We can get an acute stress reaction as a result of prolonged hunger, or again, if we find ourselves in an actual dangerous situation. Under most circumstances, once the acute threat has passed, our level of stress hormones starts to return to normal by their own accord. And this is called the relaxation response, where we are actively bringing ourselves back down into that window of tolerance. And again, chronic stress. Frequently, modern life exposes us to long-term stressful situations. So this is why we have to learn as many coping methods or coping abilities as possible for us to deal with both acute and chronic stress. So with chronic stress, people will have that urge, that physiological sensation to act, the fight, flight, freeze response. Therefore, in understanding it, we are therefore able to control it. And common examples of a chronic stressful situation can include ongoing work pressure, ongoing conflict at work, long-term relationship problems, again, long-term loneliness, and another example being persistent financial worries. So as you look at this slide, as I've mentioned, every one of us is different. Everybody's body tends to show stress in different ways. And here is a list on the one side of the slide. I'd like you to take some time and go through it and put a check mark beside the column that relates to you. Are you experiencing these physical signs of stress? Never, a little bit, or a lot? Okay? Sometimes or a lot. So take some time with this slide because it's going to help you to gain an awareness about how you are manifesting stress. Same with this slide as well. So take your time with these slides. And here's the third one. So again, you can begin to see we have a number of different reactions, both emotionally, in our thinking, and physiologically, as a result of how we are experiencing stress. There are some things that influence our stress tolerance level. So the importance of having a social support network, people that are in your lives that you consider to be trusted confidants, that you can go to share what you are experiencing. They will not judge you. They will simply be good listeners. Having a sense of control over our lives. While we cannot control things in our lives all the time, there are indeed many things that we can control in our life. So to have confidence in yourself, in your ability to influence events, and working through challenges. Reaching out to a counselor may help you to learn additional skills. Your attitude and your outlook. A sense of optimism. People with a sense of optimism usually find it easier to deal with stress. They embrace challenges. They can have a strong sense of humor and accept that change is actually part of life. And our ability to deal with our emotions. So that ability to bring our emotions into balance, back down into the window of tolerance. That we have the ability to bounce back after times and during times of adversity. and using all the previously mentioned skills in order to help us get there and balance out our emotions. All the knowledge that we have learned through the first 3 modules. Knowing about a stressful situation, understanding how long it may last, what to expect, all of these things helps us make it easier to cope. If you go into a surgery, for example, with a realistic picture of what to expect, getting as much information as you can about that event or experience or others, then our recovery can be less traumatic and less painful. And then we're quicker to bounce back afterwards. So further tips on how to cope with stress. So as we've learned, our brain needs oxygen so that we breathe in enough air, oxygenated air, for our brain and the large skeletal muscles of our arms and legs. The importance of that. This one indicates the take 3. Some people will have to take 4, 5, and 6 in terms of their deep, regulated breathing. When we feel tense, again, the benefit of tensing up our muscles and then relaxing them. Sometimes we can tense without even noticing it. So practicing being aware of what is happening in all of your various muscle groups, hold each muscle group, count to a 10, then relax. And again, starting from top to bottom or from bottom up. Again, using your imagination, closing your eyes, using visualization or imagery of a favorite, calm, relaxing place. Put yourself there. Remember the sights, the sounds, the smells. And try to come up with a phrase that you can repeat to yourself. Some people refer to it as a mantra that will help bring you back down into that relaxation response. Using your sense of humor, using the importance of exercise and getting all your muscle groups engaged. Using creative expression, whether through art or music, will also help people come back down into the window of tolerance. Proper nutrition to the very, very best of your ability. Our food is our fuel for the next day to help us deal with whatever is coming our way, and to be mindful of the maladaptive responses of excessive alcohol consumption, drug use, excessive caffeine, excessive smoking, these sorts of things, excessive nicotine, these sorts of things. I've mentioned previously about the importance to the very, very best of your ability of good sleep hygiene, known as good sleep architecture, trying to get between 7 and 8 hours of sleep a night, even if your sleep is interrupted, that we are able to cobble together 3 to 4 hours of sleep, even if you have to get up and then return to sleep. Again, the importance of interpersonal support being one of the preeminent elements of recovery from trauma, recovery from anxiety, recovery from depression, to reach out to a professional or a trusted confidant. Figure out what inspires you in your life when you feel stressed. What or who inspires you? What physical activity actually relieves stress for you? As I've mentioned, what creative activities or creative acts work for you? What brings you fulfillment? Write them down. And what keeps your mind sharp that you enjoy to do? Finally, what lightens your heart? Sometimes that can be a good cry. Sometimes that can be the deep breathing. Sometimes that can be being outdoors, talking to a trusted confidant, some other type of relaxation exercise, having a sense of humor, engaging with somebody who has a sense of humor. This brings us to the end of Module 3. Up next, Module 4.